Thank you so much to those of you who left me such kind and heartwarming comments on my previous video. They really mean a lot to me. And I'm so glad that many of you liked my project in progress, which I now finished, and I'm happy to share with you the tutorial. After I finished the beanie, I had a little bit of yarn left, and I divided that yarn into 2 equal balls because I wanted to see if I can make myself a pair of fingerless gloves, which I did, but there was barely enough yarn to make them. I'm not going to make a tutorial for them because I honestly don't think it's worthwhile. If I were to create a pattern or a tutorial for a pair of fingerless gloves, I would have made them longer, and also I would have shaped the opening for the thumb differently. But because I had a very small amount of yarn left, I worked with what I had. However, if you guys are interested to see a tutorial for a pair of fingerless gloves, do let me know in the comments below and I can create one using different yarn. But this tutorial is for the beanie, so let's start crocheting it. The yarn that I'm going to use is hand-dyed Global Backyard. The colorway is Fall Forest. This is a sock weight yarn, or it's category 2. I will be crocheting with a hook size E, 3.5 millimeters. I'm going to start with a chain that is as long as circumference of my head. In my case, it is 22 inches. So I'm going to make a chain 22 inches long. And specifically in my case, this is gonna be 128 chains. But you might have to adjust the amount of chains for the size of the hat you are making. But make sure that the total amount of chains is a multiple of 4. Here I have 128 chains, and now I'm going to join them into a ring with a slip stitch. And I need to be very careful not to twist the chain. And now the first round is very easy. It's going to be a round of double crochets. I start with 3 chains. These 3 chains count as the first double crochet. And now I'm simply going to make a double crochet into each chain around. At the end of the round, I join with a slip stitch to the top chain of the first 3 chains. And at this point, you might want to try on this strip around your head to see if it fits you well. The next round is going to be a round of front post double crochets and back post double crochets. I start with a beginning front post double crochet, and here is how I make it. I extend the loop a bit higher, I wrap it around the hook, and then I insert the hook around those 3 chains of the previous round, and then I finish my double crochet, and this is now a front post double crochet. Now around the next double crochet, I work a back post double crochet. Around the next double crochet, I make a front post double crochet. Around the next double crochet, I make a back post double crochet. So in this round, I simply alternate making front post double crochets and back post double crochets. Here I finished this round, and now I simply going to make 2 more rounds of front post double crochets and back post double crochets. So around each front post double crochet, I work a front post double crochet, and around each back post double crochet, I work a back post double crochet. and I'm going to make 2 more rounds. So now I made 2 more rounds of front post and back post double crochets, and I have 4 rounds of ribbon in total, but you can actually make your ribbon a bit wider if that's what you prefer. I'm going to start working on the main stitch at this point, so I'm going to start working clusters. First I make 2 chains, and into the same stitch as joining I work 2 double crochets finished together. 1, 2. Now I finish them together, and with those 2 chains this actually counts as 3 double crochets finished together, or the first cluster. Next I make 2 chains, and into the same stitch I work 1 more cluster, so this time 3 double crochets finished together. So again, what I have here is 3 double crochets finished together, though the first were 2 chains and then 2 double crochets, but together they count as the first cluster. Then 2 chains and then 3 double crochets finished together. Next I'm going to skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and into the next stitch again I will work a cluster, 2 chains and a cluster. So first 3 double crochets finished together. Then 2 chains, 1, 2, and into the same stitch 3 more double crochets finished together. Again, I skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and into the next one I work a cluster, two chains, and 1 more cluster into the same stitch. And that's how I'm going to continue crocheting this round. And at the end of the round I join with a slip stitch to the first cluster, and I insert the hook through all those 3 stitches like this, and the round is now joined. Next I make a slip stitch into the next chain 2 space, and I'm going to work 2 more rounds of the same clusters. So first I make 2 chains and then 2 double crochets finished together, 1, 2. I finished them together. This is my first cluster. Next 2 chains, 1, 2, and into the same chain 2 space I work 1 more cluster, 1, 2, 3, and I finish them together. Now I will be working 2 clusters, chain 2 between them, into the next chain 2 space over here. So first a cluster, then 2 chains and 1 more cluster. And that's how I'm going to continue crocheting this round. So now I have 2 rounds of clusters, and I'm going to make 1 more round of clusters in the same way, and then the following round is going to be slightly different. So first let me make 1 more round of clusters. So it's going to be a cluster, then 2 chain and a cluster. And then I'll show you the next round. Here I have 3 rounds of clusters, and the next round is going to be slightly different. I started as before with a slip stitch into the chain 2 space, and then I make 2 chains and 2 double crochets finished together. So I make a cluster just the way I did before, but now I only make 1 chain and then again I make a cluster. So in this round I'm only going to make one chain in between two clusters worked into the same chain space. So a cluster, then one chain, and one more cluster. So this is how I'm going to work this round and all the following rounds. So this gives me a little bit of stitch decrease here, but for the rest of the beanie I will be working straight, simply repeating this last round, which is a cluster, one chain, cluster, cluster, one chain, cluster. And here I worked more rounds, so I have a total of 21 rounds over here, including the ribbon. And in inches that measures about 7.25 inches. Now you might make this part a bit longer or shorter. You can adjust it to your specific size. And here's how I'm going to do the last round. I slip stitch into the chain one space, I make two chains, and then into this space I work 2 double crochets, finish together, and I get a cluster. And now into the next chain one space, again I work a cluster, but this time I make 3 double crochets, finish together. Again, one chain. Into the next chain one space, I work a cluster. And that's how I'm going to continue working this round. It's just one chain and a cluster, one chain and a cluster, all the way around. I finished this round and I joined it, and now I'm going to fasten off, but I'm going to leave the yarn tail about 9-10 inches because I'm going to use this yarn tail for stitching the top of the hat together like this. And I'm going to use a tapestry needle. I'm going to turn the beanie inside out and I'm going to stitch it on the inside. I'm going to pass the needle through the top of the stitches like this. That's the last stitch. Now I pull it tight to close that gap, and now I'm going to make more stitches over here to secure the yarn tail and really close that gap. Cut off the yarn tail. This is what the hat looks like on the top. Oh, I still need to hide this yarn tail, and then my beanie is finished.